Hello, everybody. Welcome to episode 29 of MAME Politics on this eventful day of the New Hampshire primary. We are now past the caucus, the Iowa caucus, and we are at the New Hampshire primary, which obviously is going to define a lot of this 2020 election going forward. The polls right now are beginning to close. And I'm just going to read to you the latest update. So the first polls closed in New Hampshire 25 minutes ago at the time of the recording. Right now, 3% reporting in. And this is as of 4:44 p.m. PST. Bernie Sanders at 31%, 2,272 votes. Pete Buttigieg at 20.5%, 1,469 votes. Amy Klobuchar is in third at 18.7% with 1,339. The actual vote count that I'm reading to you is probably not the actual amount of votes, technically speaking, and it actually just got updated here. So Bernie's lead hasn't gotten that much stronger. He's at 30.4% with almost 3,000 votes in, and Pete Buttigieg is slightly edging up 21.7% with 2,126 votes. So I'm going to hop over to the chat and say hello to everybody. Give me a second. Give me a second. Always takes me a second to do this. Whoops. It was a double. I had a delay going there. Hey, everybody. Hi, south of the border smoker. Hey, Adam G. Hey, Heather. Hey, JC. Hey, the bastard police. Hey, Shane. How's it going? Hey, David. Hey, Bird. Hey, No Name. How's it going? So just so you guys know, well, I might have to say this in coded language, but maybe they're tuning in late. I put out a bunch of toll cell bait on Twitter. If you don't follow me on Twitter, you probably didn't see it, but let's see what happens. I obviously did it intentionally today, right before this chat. Maybe we can smoke some of them out a little quicker this time. So expect that in this chat today. But yeah, I mean, just going back to some of the stuff I posted about Tulsi Gabbard. I mean, yeah, sure, Bernie has said some pretty dumb things about Palestine and Israel over time. He had a really bad town hall moment where a guy stood up and he got in an argument with him about Hamas, and it looked really bad for Bernie. Fully acknowledge that. However, if you told me that Bernie Sanders spoke at a panel hosted by the Christians United for Israel in 2015 with speakers Netanyahu, Senator Ted Cruz, Senator Rick Santorum, and Governor Mike Huckabee, I would be so horrified that I would not even be able to see him as a lesser of two evils candidate at that point, and I would have to vote. I wouldn't be able to cast a passive vote for him in the primary. So I just want to make that very clear for everybody, that this is a really big deal, that Tulsi Gabbard is prancing around, trying to take this sort of anti-war mantle with no really coherent explanation of how only 5 years earlier she was being courted by and palling around with and accepting invitations by some of the most hardcore Zionist neocon organizations in the country. That really, really needs to sink in with her supporters. I think it's very strange that they can't grapple with that. most of her supporters, instead of actually addressing it, they'll just say that she's changed since then. That's the defense that I basically hear continuously about her. But yet they're okay to accept no evidence that she's actually changed, other than her rhetoric and some of her statements while on the campaign trail. That just doesn't cut it for me at all. And yeah, I'm gonna bring up the fact that in 2014, either 14 or 15, she also expressed being conflicted about the torture program by the CIA and proposed a Dick Cheney-like, neoconservative-like, ticking time bomb scenario as to why she was conflicted about using torture on quote-unquote terrorists. This is unacceptable, and it needs to have a full accounting of how on earth she got from that position to now saying that she's anti-war now. It's just simply not believable to me. And in all the interviews where she basically was asked to address this, she dodged it every single time. In her interview with Jordan Cheriton, in her interview with Michael Tracy, in her interview with Primo Nutmeg, in her interview with Nico House, in her interview with Glenn Greenwald. And unfortunately, they didn't do the best job as interviewers to really press her on some of these issues and let her dodge the questions. So I'm not saying that it's their fault, but they let her slip out of it. And I think that's a problem. It's too bad that nobody really held her feet to the fire in that way and got an opportunity to interview her. Like I was saying, Scott Horton is actually one of the only libertarian anti-war people I know who's actually willing to speak honestly about a lot of her problems. Hey, Furious Psyop, welcome to our new mod. Say hello. I do have some help now in this chat. So yeah, I mean, I don't know if it's gonna work to smoke any of these people out, but I'm pretty sure the energy or the passion of them will die down after she, is clearly not going to win moving forward. But we'll see. We'll see. Emu Sings is correct. He says, I would say I am a Tulsi supporter, and yeah, I can see your points on this, but she is so smeared by the establishment. Exactly, Emu. This is a battle that I've sort of waged in my own mind, is how much do I actually want to talk about Tulsi Gabbard's problem while she is under fire from the establishment. I don't want to feed into any of the establishment attacks. So if you notice, Emu, I haven't been leveling any of those against her. I've been very careful, and I've tried to be very conscientious about what points that I've raised against her record or her rhetoric that come from the realm of left-leaning, anti-war, anti-imperialist thought. And I believe that those criticisms are very important to level towards her. And I appreciate you being here as well. If you are a supporter of hers and you're willing to hear this stuff, I really appreciate that. Joseph Liskia, sorry if I pronounced your name wrong there, says, did you hear that Connors, aka Roseanne 2.0, is doing a live episode about the New Hampshire primary now? No, that's really weird. Live how? Like, is it improvised? Like, what the fuck? Like, what does that even mean? Like, if it's scripted, what are they going to say? Decide someone who didn't won the primary? Do they have alternate lines in their script for any potentiality of like the top three? That's really weird. You usually don't hear of actual live TV specials like that anymore. That's kind of a thing of the past. Yeah, Adam G says, I feel like Robbie's criticisms are genuine, but Linda Sarsour basically wrote a dumb anti-Tulsi tweet last night. Yeah, I think outright trying to put Tulsi in the box of being like, oh, she might as well join the Republican Party is a weak criticism. I think there are much more glaring things that she should be criticized on. And specifically, if I'm going to mention two of them, it's her the weird relationship she appeared to have only 5 years ago with these hardcore Zionist organizations in DC, and herself actually espousing rhetoric that sounded neoconservative even to me as far back as 2015. Those are two big problems. How does someone go from espousing neoconservative rhetoric only 5 years ago to being the most seemingly anti-neocon politician in the race? I don't understand that, and I would like to. I want her to explain that evolution. I very much think that it's important for her moving forward as a participant in politics, whether if she continues to stay in office in some capacity, or if she's just someone to bring up talking points, or to go on television. Wow, Joseph says they're changing the script as the results come in and are doing it twice for the East and West Coast. Wow, that's super weird. That is really weird. That sounds like a real gimmick. So let's see. I'm going to see what the most... Okay, so now we have 6% reporting. So this is going as planned, right? Like, unlike Iowa, this is how the results should be coming in. We'd expect them to be coming in this fast. So now the gap between Bernie and Pete is actually closing even more. Bernie right now, at this point, 6% reporting in. Bernie has 28.8% of the vote count, 5,119 votes. Pete Buttigieg has 22.2% of the votes, 3,959. Now, I don't know if I'm actually reading off to you anything resembling like individual votes. These could be a similar thing to, the quasi like electoral style vote counts they were doing in Iowa during the caucus. JC says, I don't know how Pete is doing so well. It's obviously DNC shenanigans behind the scenes propping him up. Absolutely. I mean, beyond DNC shenanigans, I already said a couple episodes ago that Buttigieg is being hyped up now by neocons like Bill Kristol. And even the Alliance for Securing Democracy think tank is now trying to say anybody trying to tie Pete's name to this app or to the DNC officials that might have rigged Iowa are basically Russian state actors or useful idiots for Russian disinformation apparatus. So that's already happening. Jordan Cheriton and Gray Zone's Twitter account were both identified by the Alliance for Securing Democracy as two disinfo state-backed media people pushing that out there. So I'm wondering if Jordan Cheriton might actually have like a legal case, because the here is the Alliance for Securing Democracy Twitter account literally calling him an individual. What? Emu Singh says, I saw Larry David contributed $2,800 to Pete Buttigieg. That's terrible. Bernie Sanders is his cousin. He has no family loyalty. He's voting for his opponent. That's weird. Tom Collector, yeah, I suggested to Jordan to sue him. I'm sure he already had the idea, but I sent him a DM as soon as I saw it and said this could be libel potentially. Yeah, I mean it's there's definitely something really suspicious about Pete Buttigieg. I keep doing that. I mean, just his answers about Soleimani at the last debate, to me, really clued me in that he's on the same page as these neocon think tanks, that he's trained by them, that he knows all about it. He really, really creeps me out. Tom Collector says, I actually think Abby's lawsuit will go really well. Well, thank you for those positive words and encouragement, Tom. I hope so, too. It already got an Associated Press write-up, which was pretty cool. It got written up in the Times of Israel, which was pretty surprising. And shockingly, the Times of Israel did not characterize it negatively. I mean, the media coverage of it so far that's come out is pretty positive and or neutral. Normally, I would expect anything about Abby to come through mainstream media to pull out smears about her in a really severe way to undermine whatever she's trying to do. This time is different. Um, it's actually really surprising to me how many media stories came out that characterize it pretty accurately. Few of them said stuff like she worked for Russian media, Russian state-owned outlet RT, and stuff like that. But beyond that, fairly neutral coverage about it. And I don't know if you guys watched her press conference. Um, she's sick right now, and then I mean she still did the press conference. Um, so yeah, hats off to her for traveling all the way out there to Georgia to do that. I mean, that's a big deal. She lives in California. She didn't have to do that. She could have had maybe someone else do it, but that's a big. I think she really. It's a brave thing to do, and it's also, it's not. I I was saying on previous episodes of the show. I don't like to travel. Like it stresses me the hell out. Um, I don't like doing it. If I'm asked to do it for something, it's not fun for me. So imagine taking a plane flight and taking time out of your busy schedule to go file a lawsuit in Georgia of all places, not knowing if it's going to get any traction at all. So I think what she did is pretty important and pretty brave, and I'm really proud of her. So Abby, if you're listening, I'm proud of you, sister. You make me proud every day. Tom Collector, no, it's not. Although over time it's gotten closer to becoming something that's actually been able to sustain some of my living costs, which is amazing. I never expected it to. I mean, we've been doing the podcast for 10 whole years now, and it was always a labor of love. So it's just kind of icing on the cake now that, I can pay some of my bills now with Meaty Roots. But no, I do other work as well. I'm a freelance audio engineer. Um, do some other things on the side. Um, I mean, I spread myself pretty thin across a bunch of different sources of income. Let's just put it that way. Um, I do a lot of different things to make money. Um, and yeah, I kind of don't want to. I mean, I don't. It would be weird to me if Media Roots grew into something where it was making me, a completely sustainable income. I don't know what that would like. I do watch out for, just the premise of it's like, even people who are on YouTube, for example, who get all their money through super chats and stuff. I worry sometimes about how those people are steering their content to just try to get more money through super chats and stuff like that. Like it's kind of a feedback loop. So I'm very conscientious of how money can change something. So I'm always thinking about that. Like if Media Roots ever grew, like say if it grew like 2 times overnight in subscribers, it would be simultaneously exciting, but I would also make sure that I am, uh, staying completely true to myself and not letting that have any impact on uh, the content that's put out. Because yeah, money changes things. I mean, people can say that it doesn't, or Glenn Greenwald and Jeremy Scahill can pretend that they're doing the same thing they would be doing. Didn't change anything, but of course it did. I mean, Jeremy Scahill gets paid something like $40,000 for like a one-page kind of milquetoast article on the Intercept. I mean, that's insane. That's nuts. Um, Furious Psyop, who is our new mod, by the way, says Super Chat definitely has an effect on content direction. It absolutely does. Um, It absolutely does. Uh, but anything does. I mean, to be completely honest, I mean, any amount of income that you get from anything could have the potential to change or steer your content in a certain direction. So that's all, I'm just saying. I'm trying to be very, very conscientious of that fact. Um, but yeah, I mean, it's it's hard to get by. You know, I mean, I still struggle sometimes. Well, thanks, Tom. Tom says, I feel like Meaty Roots does have a real sense of purity to it. Well, we tried to. I mean, we tried to keep that. I mean, if you notice, the website Meaty Roots is not very active these days. It's all really all about the podcast now. Um, Websites are hard to maintain. I mean, I honestly feel like if you're doing a website right, like a news website, you need to make that your number one focus. And at a certain point, we realized that, I mean, the podcast, Empire Files, there's so many other projects we're doing, that the website, it had to be deprioritized. Um, so, in case you're wondering what kind of video games are going to be happening on today's episode of Main Politics, there are actually two games. And originally, I was going to call this episode Bad Nintendo Arcade Games. But I suppose Super Punch Out, the game that's on the screen right now, is actually not that bad. But I mean, I guess if I'm being honest, I do think it's bad. Like, it does seem like it's one of Nintendo's most hard worked on games from this time period, and they really change it into something actually good on the console NES. But originally, Punch Out, because this is Super Punch Out, this is an expanded version of the original arcade. Originally, you'll see why the original Punch Out is not just more awkward than the Nintendo version, but it just doesn't pop quite the same way. The aesthetics, the sounds, even the graphics, even though they're technically better on Super Punch Out than on the NES Mike Tyson's Punch Out, they just don't come together in the same aesthetically pleasing way that Nintendo Punch Out had. And what's interesting about this game is Nintendo. Tom Collector says, I thought the way the machine looked was pretty cool, and that weird green net guy. Yeah, Nintendo originally wanted to make a racing game. So I read up on the original invention of Punch Out, how they came up with it. So I guess Nintendo at the time was not doing particularly well with their arcade machines. They had already released Donkey Kong. So I think Donkey Kong was their first like really big hit that had come out at that point. And they had a surplus of screens for some reason in the Nintendo hardware headquarters, like an overage of monitors. So their idea was to make a dual monitor racing game that was going to be a 2D side scroller, which seems kind of weird. Like, it almost reminds me of like those old Atari racing games like Drag Race and stuff. So Nintendo was originally going to make a 2-monitor side by side, where one monitor on one side, one monitor on the other, where you would share both screens for the same racetrack for a 2D side-scrolling racing game. Now, they discovered that keeping the sprites at the time with their hardware and their programming abilities, making the sprites transfer from one screen to the other and have the action being duplicated on both screens, like as part of the same game, they couldn't figure out how to do it properly. So at the time, what happened was there was a Nintendo executive who was in the U.S. in Vegas. I think he was at like CES or some trade show, and he was watching the sports betting, and it was the first time he'd ever seen Mike Tyson, and this is way before Mike Tyson won the heavyweight championship belt title, and he was so captivated by Mike, like how good Mike Tyson was at boxing, this young kid, that they basically tried to set up a licensing deal right away with Mike Tyson. Um, I skipped some stuff in between that though. The Punch Out arcade game had nothing to do with Mike Tyson. They realized that the two screens racing game idea that was supposed to be a 2D side scroller wasn't going to work. So after some of these Nintendo executives realized they wanted to tap more into the American market because they really hadn't at that time, Nintendo decided to use one of the screens, one of the monitors in the game, only for the scoreboard. They realized that programming-wise and hardware-wise, it was the easiest thing they'd come up with at the time that would work without glitching out. It wouldn't slow down too much, and it would be relatively stable to have one screen just have the scoreboard and the other screen have the boxing match. So that's how they ended up putting out the game. It was a dual monitor game. It originally was going to have glove controllers, like the Power Glove design originally comes from the Punch-Out prototype arcade machine. Miyamoto, creator of Super Mario Brothers, was tasked in the game to design the sprites. Now, he had never designed sprites this big before in a game. So even for him, the guy who made Popeye and Donkey Kong, even for him, designing sprites this large was too big of a task for him. He needed direction. So he actually got in touch with the animation house that was behind Dragon Ball Z at the time, and they designed. So they actually did third-party sprite design on this Nintendo game. The people behind the animation studio of Dragon Ball Z designed all these crazy, weird characters that Miyamoto had made sketches for. So he made like little smaller version sketches of like Bald Bull and all these Punch-Out characters. And you can actually see in the original promo poster artwork for the Punch-Out arcade game, you can see fully drawn, full-sized like anime style sprites of all the characters in Punch-Out, and they look very like Dragon Ball Z-ish. It's interesting. So anyways, when this game came out, it actually wasn't too successful. Nintendo tried to entice people again by making an upgrade to it called Super Punch-Out, which was just like another board, or you can replace some chips on the board that you already had. But the game was not one of their more successful games. Coming off the heels of Donkey Kong, the amount of energy they put into this game, they were not satisfied with the results of it. And instead of just directly porting it to the NES like they had done to Donkey Kong, like they had done to Popeye, like they had done to the Super Mario Brothers arcade, they decided to basically do a new game from the ground up. And the game was basically redesigned to make it play better, to make it easier to understand, to make it more like cinematic even than the arcade game was. And what they did was they bought basically a really cheap, for today's standard, license from Mike Tyson. I think something like Nintendo executive got a Mike Tyson license for something like $60,000 when this game came out. I mean, imagine how cheap, how amazing of a value that was for Nintendo to do that. And apparently the story about, I remember hearing as a kid that the reason they took Mike Tyson out of the NES Punch-Out later on was because of his rape charges and his jail sentence. Apparently that's not the case. That the real reason Nintendo didn't renew the license is because by the time it expired, it would have been like millions of dollars, because Mike Tyson had by that time won the heavyweight championship title. So they got the license like when he was just like a green fighter who was starting to win all these matches, who was getting famous and buzz, but he wasn't like at that status yet. So, and then for another day, maybe on a future episode of MAME Politics, I will show you the bizarre quasi sequel to Punch-Out for the NES that has a Mike Tyson sprite, not just in the game, but also on the cover of the game box. And they didn't officially license Mike Tyson's name for it. There's a lot of mixed history about it. Nintendo claims that they never were making a sequel to Punch-Out, even though they put their seal of approval on this bizarre game that's called like Super Punch 2. I believe that's the title. Look it up online. It is in some form some sort of weird sequel to Punch-Out with Mike Tyson that Nintendo decided to abandon. And it's a very bizarre game. It looks like a clone of the original Punch-Out, but you fight like aliens. You're not fighting on Earth, you're fighting like alien boxers. It's a very weird game. One of these days when we move into other emulated systems, I'll show you that. So yeah, I thought that was interesting about Punch-Out. I hope you guys were interested to hear that. So let's try to play this weird Nintendo game that came out before the original NES Punch-Out, and let's see how well I do. Because I'd like to think I'm pretty good at the original Punch-Out. Power Punch 2. Yes, Adam G. Pretty sure that's what it is. Let me look it up just to make sure. Yes, so look up Power Punch 2 right now on Google, and you'll immediately see that the box cover is Mike Tyson. There is no question that that's Mike Tyson. I mean, he probably could have sued them for using his image on the cover of this game. But what it seems like is there was some licensing agreement for Power Punch 2 that fell through and just didn't go through. I don't actually know. Terror Toddler asks, Robbie, what is the etymology behind the term sprite in the context of these early arcade games? I actually don't know where the word actually derives from. I mean, it's the term sprite is used in any two-dimensional video game, really. Yeah, how pathetic is Andrew Yang kowtowing to Brett Weinstein? I mean, who the fuck is this guy Brett Weinstein? Like, it's just so weird. All of a sudden, we're supposed to like pay attention to the brother of the phony motherfucker who did that protest at Evergreen College to create that, career path for him to be an intellectual dark web douchebag. I mean, we're supposed to all of a sudden pay attention to his brother? Like, I mean, it's one thing, first of all, that Eric Weinstein is supposed to be someone we give a fuck about. Like, he's supposed to be an authentic operator. But why? What the hell is the deal with Brett Weinstein? Like, how phony and weird is that? A guy who literally interacts with Peter Thiel on a daily basis, works for his company. Like, what on earth is he even doing in the dialogue? Like, why would Joe Rogan even bring him on his podcast? It shit's weird, dude. And yeah, it's super weird. Super weird. Ruben Garcia, Brett Weinstein is not famous for anything. That's what's so weird. Eric Weinstein got famous, I guess, for refusing to leave campus during that People of Color Day, and then making such a big deal about it that he became an intellectual dark web hero. Tom Collector, yeah, Brett Weinstein. I did see. That's actually really fascinating that you bring that up, Tom, because I remember watching that clip of Brett Weinstein, making it seem like he's the most liberal guy ever, but yet polyamory was something that he found very threatening to the current status quo of the family and all this stuff. And his reason for thinking polyamory was so evil is because children, especially if you have children, what are you going to tell the children? Well, I don't know, be a fucking grown-up, dude. Like actually teach your kids about life and stop being a fucking baby. Like, what the fuck? I mean, it's just so weird. Like, he basically made no good defensive argument whatsoever about like why monogamy, should be the way and why polyamory is bad. Just other than that he's afraid about it and he's afraid to talk to his own kids about it. I don't even know if he has kids or not. And then he also made it seem like, oh, I'm so in love with my wife. Like, ooh, like we don't need to have polyamory. It's like, it's just so babyish. It's like, just let people do whatever they want, dude. Tom Collector says Penn Jillette is polyamorous and his children seem fine, even though he has a conspiracy hang-up. Penn Jillette's a fascinating character. Yeah, I think he's really douchey for being basically like a Sam Harrisy new atheist, anti-Muslim, kind of Islamophobe. He's got some neocon. He's like at that weird neocon libertarian intersection, right? Like kind of like Tucker E, but in a different way. Um, but I thought actually one of the most admirable things about Penn Jillette that I'm aware of is that he actually filed a patent for a female sex toy, water sex toy. I kid you not, there is a Penn Jillette patent filed with the U.S. Patent Office that you can look up right now of a diagram and a full breakdown of a jet water-based female sex toy. So hats off to Penn Jillette for that. I mean, I give him props for that. And he's also a good magician. So those are the only good things I could say about him. I think I saw Pierce here earlier in the chat. Hey, Pierce. Good to see you, man. Finally catching the live stream while it's live, he says. People should listen to Porkins Policy Radio if you haven't already. It's an excellent show. Very much on the same wavelength as Media Roots Radio. Porkins Policy is on hiatus. Yes, I believe it still is. Pierce can confirm that it is. I mean, otherwise I'd be listening to it. So, Pierce says he's doing the Ocelli effect at 9, which I think means East Coast time. So at around 6 p.m. PST, go tune into the Ocelli effect. Check out Pierce. I'm gonna be gone by then. Tom Collector says that Penn Jillette is not Sam Harris level at all. Interesting. I mean, he definitely seems like a fascinating person. I mean, I have more respect for him than someone like Ricky Gervais, who seems more like knee-jerk sort of Sam Harris level. There are certain new atheist celebrities who I just cannot stand. Even though Penn Jillette had really dishonestly tried to like smear truthers on his really dumb show called Bullshit, which is basically a lot of libertarian propaganda. I still think he's got an interesting enough career. I mean, I can look past some of that stuff, but yeah, I mean, I still am kind of irritated at him that he didn't fully disclose what type of stuff Trump would tell him during the filming of The Apprentice. He's very oddly tight-lipped about what was said behind the scenes, even though he says that it's just as vile, sexist, and horrible as you can imagine. Then say it. What is it? I mean, talk about it. Pierce says, please do a Gunstar Heroes episode. I played that obsessively in college. We absolutely will, Pierce. Once we get Genesis emulation going on the setup, definitely will. Lori has already requested that be a 2-player game that we do. So, absolutely. And if you like Gunstar Heroes, Pierce, there are some other Treasure games that we'll also be playing soon. Treasure is the company that made Gunstar Heroes. For those of you who aren't aware of who Treasure is a group of game developers that defected from Konami. And while they were at Konami, they worked on some of the best later period Konami games, including Contra 3 Alien Wars, Castlevania 4, Bucky O'Hare for the NES. But once they left, they made amazing games like Gunstar Heroes, Guardian Heroes, Dynamite Heady, Ikaruga, and Radiant Silvergun. I mean, Ikaruga and Radiant Silvergun are arguably two of the best shoot-'em-ups of all time. I mean, easily in the top 5. I think any shoot-'em-up fan would agree that Ikaruga is probably one of the most difficult, challenging games ever made, and is like almost designed for hardcore speed run, like strat people who learn every nook and cranny of a game. I mean, the timing. Ikaruga is pretty cool overhead shooter where one of the ships or both of the ships, you can play 2 players at the same time, can switch colors between white and black with a 1 button press, like instantly. And all the bullets in the game are either white or black. and you can absorb black bullets if you're black and white bullets if you're white. And it's a bullet hell shooter with bullets of differing colors coming at you, where you quickly have to switch your ship color to absorb the different colors. It's crazy. It's one of the most interesting. I mean, it's one of the most interesting games ever made, honestly. Bob Roberts, yes, Pierce, we need to do that. Absolutely. Let's do that soon. Play Battletoads 2-player mode, Ruben Garcia says. Are you referring to the arcade game, Ruben, or the NES game? Because both games are really, really cool. Actually, there's even a Super Nintendo Battletoads that's a different game as well. There's like 3 Battletoads games that I know of. I know there's Battletoads versus Double Dragon for the Genesis. Oh, NES. Okay. We'll do that. Even though it's supposed to be like one of the hardest games ever made for NES. But it looks really, really cool. I've actually never played it before. Beard World Order. Beard World Order. Was that Pierce, Corbett, and someone else? I forgot. Yeah, who was the Beard World Order? God, yeah. Warren is losing to Klobuchar, says Tom Collector. How must she feel? Yeah. Oh my God. I mean, what a joke. What a joke. So right now, 14% reporting. 14%. So things seem to be moving along, right? This is not the disaster Iowa was. The gap between Bernie and Pete isn't closing as much as it's sort of staying the same. So right now, Bernie has 29%, 14% reporting in total, 29%, 10,613 votes. Pete Buttigieg, 22.4%, 8,208 votes. Amy Klobuchar, how is that even possible? It doesn't even make sense. How is she getting even more than Biden or Warren? How is that? That doesn't make any sense. She's at 19.6, 7,169 votes. So, hey, guys, she's doing, this is actually the best turnout for her, because I don't know if you guys saw MSNBC, but if she gets third in this race, that's actually better than getting first. I don't know if you know that, but her third place showing in this race is actually really good for her. I mean, if I got third place in this race, I would be more pleased than if I had gotten first place. Yeah. Bayonets and harmonicas. Did Bernie end up losing Iowa? That's a good question. I don't know what the eventual decision was. I think in terms of how much delegates, I think actually Pete got like one more delegate or something. So like, even though he won the popular vote, Ned Ryerson, yes, I have seen Tom Cotton exploiting the coronavirus to push anti-China rhetoric, and that's not surprising at all. What is more surprising, though, is how Tom Cotton stabbed Bill Kristol in the heart and didn't vote for impeachment. I mean, that had to have been really crushing for Bill, because this is Bill's puppet. I mean, Bill's been grooming this guy for over 5 years. So, yeah, I mean, it must be really crushing. And Joe Kristol, his son, is Tom Cotton's like top staffer. So, I don't know what's going on in his family right now, but I'm sure that they're not, Bill is not too pleased about that. I mean, to only have Romney be the only person to vote for impeachment, probably not too happy. Sounds like Lori just got home. Well, I should probably wrap this up soon, but I might as well play a round or two of Punch-Out for you guys before I go. Sorry, I thought it was going to go longer than expected, but it's going to be a slightly short episode. Hey, Lori. I'm streaming down here, just so you know. You can come down. Come down, say I'm streaming, yeah. I'm gonna play Punch-Out, yeah.
Oh, cute.
Yeah.
A game I hate, so I'm not jealous.
You hate Punch-Out?
I don't care for.
Well, have you played the arcade?
No. I mean, maybe momentarily right when we got this thing.
Yeah. Adam says, sachet chante. By the way, did you watch RuPaul on Saturday Night Live?
I did not.
Okay.
I feel bad. I need to watch all of that. I need to watch the all the stupid shit that happened at the Oscars.
What happened to the Oscars? RuPaul?
No, just a bunch of stupid shit. I'm just behind.
Okay. So you guys ready for some Punch Out? Before we sign off tonight, let me see if there's any new results here. I guess we're just we got one more percentage reporting. Bernie Sanders at 29.2%, Pete Buttigieg 22.4%, Amy Klobuchar, which makes no sense, still 19.4%. I mean, that's weird, right? That she's third now.
Is Biden? Click show more. Click show more. Oh, Biden at 7.8%. He's eating it.
Yeah. And actually, I'm kind of surprised that Tulsi is showing so low, because a lot of people...
I'm not.
Well, a lot of people were saying that her New Hampshire strategy was really locked in. Even Burmis, I was on his podcast a couple days ago, and he was sure that she was going to give a third place showing at least. Because the New Hampshire primary, I guess, is an open primary where you can be a Libertarian or Republican and vote in the Democratic.
Yeah, but magical thinking still doesn't
Yeah.
change
So
outcome.
guys, I hate to say, if you're a Tulsi fan, she is showing below Tom Steyer at 2.3%. That's I'm a little bit surprised by that. I bought into the hype a little bit. I definitely bought onto the hype. All right, are you ready to do this? Are you ready to watch me play Punch Out?
Ready.
Okay. Lori's going to watch me play Punch Out, and you guys are going to watch me too. Here we go. Oh, interesting. Rhizome says New Hampshire isn't a true open primary. People have to register as undecided or undeclared. Then they can request ballots or one-party election, but they can't be registered in R and vote in D.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay, so then basically
Semi-open.
a lot of these Tulsi fans then were getting their information wrong. I believed what they were saying, so that's very interesting. So the strategy that she is, I guess that her fans thought she was going for is not the soundest strategy. But she's been spending quite a lot of time in New Hampshire. C-SPAN even ran like a town hall event from her like a week ago in New Hampshire. So that's how long she's been there. She's been there, even before Iowa, doing all these town halls and stuff. So here, we're going to do Super Punch Out. Here we go. Okay, I'm already confused because this is not playing like the Nintendo game. Oh, okay. No, it kind of does play with like the Nintendo game. Oh, shit. I know this is going to be funny coming from me, but this is already a lot harder than the Nintendo game. And actually, I realized something I didn't say about this game is that it actually is the first game with sprite scaling, from what I understand. So you see how the guy sprite is like being zoomed in and zoomed out when he gets closer to me? I don't even think they did that on the original Nintendo game. Mike Tyson's Punch Out, I mean, I think it looks better than this, but this technically has like more of a color palette. It's got, I mean, I guess the sprites are bigger. It feels more like a 16-bit game, but I still think the original Nintendo one has a cleaner, nicer look to it. I mean, this green net thing just bugs me. Shit. Fucking hard. This is like almost like you're at like the third or fourth Fuck. Oh, wow. I fucking suck. Even the Super Nintendo version of Punch-Out's called Super Punch-Out, it's not this game. It's a different game, but I know it has this character in it, Bear Hugger, or whatever the hell his name is. God damn, Bear Hugger's destroying me. Oh, fuck. Fuck. The timing is a little, like, slower than the Nintendo Punch-Out. Okay, good. At least I knocked him out once. Son of a bitch. And then he just destroyed me, so. Ned Ryerson, I've only done 2. I did one on the Nico House program, and I did one on Michael Tracy's show. And what was weird about it for me is that I didn't realize at the time. I thought I was debating with 2 people who just kind of supported Tulsi, you know, on their individual platforms. I didn't realize at the time that I was debating with 2 people who would later become what appears to be Tulsi campaign officials or surrogates. That was a little unsettling to me that the 2 people I ended up debating are basically now indistinguishable from her own campaign officials. Nico House just opened one of her town halls in New Hampshire with a strange speech. Michael Tracy has been shadowing her campaign seemingly for the past months, doing nothing but positive, glowing coverage of her. And it seems odd to me, to say the least. But let's just hope for the best tonight. I'm going to read to you the last results. So 17% is now reporting. Bernie Sanders, 28.6%, 11,862 votes. Pete Buttigieg, 22.7%, 9,416 votes. We got Biden all the way down here at 7.9% in 5th place, 3,289 votes. Andrew Yang is actually right underneath Joe Biden. That's surprising. 3%, 1,237 votes. And then Tulsi Gabbard in between Tom Steyer and Deval Patrick at 2.3, 973 votes. So on some level, this must be a big disappointment for her followers. Even Ron Paul did way better, I think, by the time the New Hampshire primary came around in 2012. And it was actually really suspicious then, where it seemed like Santorum was polling way below Ron Paul. And Fox News made it so that Santorum got 3rd place and Ron Paul got 4th. So they didn't have to show Ron Paul's name. And I remember a lot of people back then thought it was very, very suspicious because the exit polling did not match with what they showed. Yes, Michael Tracy is shadowing the Tulsi campaign right now. But thank you again, guys, for listening to this episode or watching this episode of MAME Politics, episode 29. I was going to play for you some other games today, but they were far worse, actually, than this one. The other games I had pulled up was a game called Sheriff and Hellfire by Nintendo. Both very poorly made games. Before Nintendo had its cred, before Donkey Kong, before Mario Brothers. Nintendo was pretty much putting out clones of other game companies' games. Like, they're making like Atari clones. And so one of these days I want to tell you guys the story about how Atari tried to fuck with Nintendo once Nintendo took over the American video game market, and what lengths Atari went to make sure their fake cutout company Tengen became an actual line of Nintendo games. They did some really shady shit, and it's an interesting story. Yang just dropped out.
Yang just dropped out of the race.
Wow. Okay, that's some breaking news.
As soon as the polls closed.
Yang dropped out of the race. And yes, Bird World us. What's strange is even if you are the most left-wing person out there, even if that's the case, Ron Paul's foreign policy and his positions on foreign policy are still more compatible than a left-wing anti-imperialist belief system than Tulsi's are. And she's running as a Democrat. So try to make sense out of that. I mean, that's what's super weird to me. But anyways, I'll leave you guys with that thought. If you would like to get access to all of the all of the locked, hidden episodes of MAME Politics after they air, 1 out of every 3 of these episodes will only be available to my Patreon subscribers. And you could get access to those by becoming a subscriber of mine at patreon.com/Robbie Martin for as little as $5 a month. So thank you, everybody. Take care.
Bye.
And don't watch too much TV tonight. It's probably just going to be a boring shit show. Just refresh Google or something. All right. Bye, guys.